It is the 16th of June 1815. Having returned in triumph from exile only 3 months earlier, Napoleon now leads his Armée du Nord north into Belgium, in what he hopes will be a swift and decisive blow against his coalition enemies. As he heads towards Ligny to crush the Prussians, Marshal Ney is on the road to Quatre Bras to sweep the Anglo-Allies from this key strategic junction and clear the way to Brussels. General Drouet de Erlon, commander of the French First Corps, is controversially caught in a series of conflicting orders between his emperor and Ney, his divisions marching back and forth throughout the day between the two battles, contributing to neither. Lost to the annals of history is a series of harassing actions by Allied units against de Erlon's corps as the French traipse across the Belgian countryside. In those 8 hours, men fought and died for the honour of their countries, regiments, flags, eagles, and their comrades in arms. Who will be victorious? Only the dice will tell. Part 1. It is late morning of the 16th. Allied spies have reported that a set of orders meant for d'Erlon's corps have been lost on the road to Quatre Bras by an incompetent aide-de-camp. A local farmer has reported them found, and a company from the French 13th Léger have been dispatched to retrieve the orders. Sensing an opportunity, the Anglo-Allies hastily assemble a small force of British troops, spearheaded by the 95th Rifles, to intercept and secure them before the French can. The race is on. So, welcome to part 1 of 8 Hours of the 100 Days, which is a mini Napoleonic battles campaign we're going to be playing over the next few weeks, which is loosely based around the 100 Days campaign for Waterloo. Although don't shoot me if it's not that historically accurate. This is a bit of fun. And the reason I'm doing this, I've got a reasonable Napoleonics collection, but I've got a lot of things still in boxes that need to be, so a lot of models in boxes that need to be painted. So I'm going to use this campaign as a way of a bit of an incentive to get myself painting and get those units on the tabletop. So it's going to be a series of linked scenarios, probably some smaller skirmish games to start with. And for each one of those scenarios, I'll need to paint and build some new units, some new models for that scenario, and then slowly build my collection up ready for a big grand finale battle at the end. In terms of the campaign itself, I'm going to keep it pretty simple. There'll be some credits and penalties for the winners and losers of each scenario, and those credits and penalties will build up and be able to use for the regiments in the final game. So be able to buff some regiments up and to debuff some regiments as well. So this is part 1. So the French are on their way down to this farmhouse to pick up the orders that have been lost, and the British are on their way to try and intercept. So let's go over and see the forces. So here are the British and French forces for today's game. But before I get into their composition, let's talk about what I've painted. So I finally got round to painting up some 95th Rifles. So I've had these in a box for about a year now. So I've got these ready for today's game. I really like some of the poses that you get in that box, which I've picked up from Warlord Games. Really nice stuff. And then on this side for the French, I've painted up these voltigeurs. So the ones on the right there are from Warlord, and the ones on the left here are from Perry Miniatures. Again, some great poses and adds a real nice variety to your collection. And the other guys at the back are from my existing collection. So for the British, we've got a company from the 52nd Oxfordshires, and basically because it's a skirmish style battle, each base will operate independently. So each base of 4 men is effectively like a group of kind of section, whatever you want to call it, of from the company, moving around in loose order. And then the 95th will operate in 2 groups of 4 as well. And similar for the French, we've got a company from the 13th Léger, albeit they've got a little bit of support from the Grenadier Company there, so some lads from the Grenadier Company have turned up to support, as well as some of the guys from the Voltigeur Company as well. The 2 commanders are command rating 8, and they will be giving out orders to each base independently, and there'll be a slight change to how you normally operate orders, because obviously it's not we're not ordering around battalions here, you're ordering around a small company, it's in skirmish order, so it's slightly different in terms of how I work blunders, but I'll talk through that as the game progresses. Okay then, enough chatting, let's get on with the game. That's the end of turn 1. So there's going to be a maximum 7 turns in this game, and turn 1 was basically a deployment and movement phase. So the orders are out here in the courtyard, waiting to be picked up. And the British rolled off and won the roll off, so they moved first. Now, as I said in the preamble, the officer gives out orders to each stand of 4, or for the sections of 4, 95th there. Now, if he fails an order, the stand can still make an initiative move, just one initiative move, or if he blunders, they can't move. And it's as simple as that. And also, if you do blunder or fail order, you can still continue to give orders to the company. Otherwise, we're going to be here all night. So, as you can see, the 95th, or a section of the 95th, managed to start to head towards the farm, supported by a section from the 52nd. We've got a section here, and this section of 95th are moving out towards the high ground here, and these guys are in support. So I've also reduced ranges for this game because of the size of the board. So everything's at 2/3, so movement is 8 inches rather than 12. For the French, not too bad. They managed to get a section of the voltigeurs up with this section of 13th Leger. We've got another section of voltigeurs there, and then a big clump coming up towards the rear. In terms of the farmhouse itself, I'm not going to allow it to be occupied or used as a defensive position because I think it'll be too strong for the game. So it's just there for a bit of decoration and making the board look nice for the objective. Okay, so over to turn 2, which is going to be the British. So that's the end of turn 2 movement for the British, and it's been a pretty good turn. So he managed to get this section of the 52nd up into the courtyard, and they have secured the orders. Now, the victory conditions for this scenario are basically if you can get the orders off your table edge, which for the British is this side here, and for the French, obviously, the other side, that is a major victory. If you are in possession of the orders at the end of the game, but still on the board, that's a minor victory, and obviously anything else is a loss. And basically, that then influences the level of credits or the level of penalties that you get at the end of this scenario, and I'll talk about that when the game's finished. So they've secured the orders, which is good news, and also this section of 95th and this section of 52nd managed to get up into some firing lines on that lead unit of French there, and this unit of the 95th managed to get up onto the high ground, again getting some fire across the hedgerows there, and these two sections just moved up in support. Okay, so we've got a bit of shooting, so I'll come back for that. Alright then, so before we get on with the shooting phase here, I just wanted to just clarify some of the statistics for the units. So I'm using Albion Triumphant Volume 2 from Warlord Games, which is the 100 Days campaign supplement that they produce. So I'm basically using the small unit statistics for all the units on the table. So for example, for the 95th Rifles here, they've got a shoot value of 3, hand-to-hand of 4, morale of 4 and stamina of 2. They've also got the sharpshooter rule, so they basically get to re-roll 1 dice as well. I'm also going to ignore things like if you're shooting at skirmishers, like these voltigeurs are skirmishers, you normally get not a clear target, but I think because basically all of these are skirmishers, I'm just going to ignore that for the game, for the purpose of the game, and speed things up a little bit. Okay, so let's crack on. So the 95th getting 3 shots. Now again, I've reduced ranges by 2/3. They've got rifled muskets, which have got 24, which becomes 16. So those guys are well in range and in target of that section. So we've got 3 dice, hitting on 4s and re-rolling 1 for sharpshooter. So that's 2 hits and a disorder on a 6, so 6 disorders. And nothing for the re-roll, so that is 2 hits. So let's roll for the save. So there's 2 saves of 4 required. That's 1 save, so that's 1 casualty. And they are disordered, so I'll put a disorder marker down on there, and also 1 casualty marker as well. Okay, we'll come now. This unit of this little section of 52nd can't see, so they're not going to be able to shoot. So the only other units in range are these 95th, so we'll just come on to their shooting. Actually, apologies, they are out of range. I forgot we'd reduced ranges to 2/3, so they can't shoot. So that is the end of the shooting phase on turn 2 for the British. Not a bad turn. They've managed to pick up the orders, and they've also got themselves in a good supporting position. So let's move over to French turn 2. So that's the end of turn 2 movement for the French. So as you can see, the commander decided to get a bit of a flanking manoeuvre going on to try and cut off the escape route for this British unit here with the orders. So he managed to get 2 of the sections here up to the edge of the farmhouse, and the grenadiers in support. On the road here, this unit was disordered, so they couldn't move, but he managed to get the second unit of voltigeurs up in support, and they've got some line of sight onto the 95th there. But this brave section here decided to get stuck in with a shout of "Vive l'Empereur" and fixed bayonet, and they charged into that section there of the 52nd. So we'll have a bit of hand-to-hand combat going on. They did take a casualty to closing fire, but the French are in at the British in their turn. So let's move over to French turn 2 shooting. So we'll start off with the disordered voltigeurs unit. Now again, they get 2 shooting dice, so the 95th get 3, so they're slightly better than the voltigeurs, but they still get 2, but they are also sharpshooter, so they get to read one of these. Now they are disordered, so that is -1 to their shooting. So they're getting 2 shots, hitting on 5s, but re-rolling one of these. So that's 1 hit and re-roll. 2 hits and a disorder. Really good shooting from the French, despite being disordered themselves. So the 95th need to make 2 saves of 4, which they don't make. So that is bad news. They are actually, so that means they are shaken because they've taken their maximum casualties. They've got 2 stamina, and they're also disordered. So that's not a good start for the boys in green. And then this unit here, they can still see the 95th, but only really one of the guys there. So I'm going to reduce their shooting down to 1 dice, and that's only fair. They're not disordered, so they're just going to be hitting on a 4. But re-rolling, because again they are sharpshooter. And they hit as well, so another save of 4 required, which they do make. So that's that unit's taken a few in the face, and that's the end of the shooting phase, because none of these units have got any line of sight and can't shoot. So we'll move over to the hand-to-hand phase for this combat over here. Okay, so both sections get a hand-to-hand combat dice of 4. Now they normally hit on 4s as well, but because the French unit charged in, they're getting +1 to their rolls. So they're getting 4 dice hitting on 3s, and the British getting 4 dice hitting on 4s. So we'll do the French first on 3s. No re-rolls. Not great, just the 1 hit for the French, and then 4 for the British, and 2 hits for the British. So 2 saves for the French of 4. So that is 1 casualty, and then 1 save of 4 for the British, which they don't make either. So that is 1 casualty each. So that is a drawn combat. However, because they're now up to 2 casualties, and they've got 1, this French unit is actually shaken. So because it's a drawn combat and they are shaken, they'll be testing for morale. So we'll do that now. And there's no modifiers, so it's just 2 dice, and they want to roll as high as they can. 8 is fine, so 8 they stay in combat. So that's it. We'll go over to turn 3 for the British. So that's the end of turn 3 movement for the British. Now just a couple of things just to go back on. So with the hand-to-hand combat, I'm not allowing any supports because it's a skirmish game. So even though the 95th were there, they're not giving any support to that unit in combat. And also you have to be ordered into combat. You can't charge on initiative as well. So, but they were ordered in, so that's fine. And also the 95th are Elite 4+, which means they could have removed that disorder on a roll of 4+, but they rolled a 1, so they're still disordered. But some good movement. So you try to get the guys with the orders to move as far as they can, but they only got 1 move. So, but they're at the farmhouse and they are making a run for it, so they're heading this way. And then he moved a couple of these units over just to provide some supporting fire, and he managed to get this section across again to try and block the French coming round this flanking manoeuvre. So that's the end of the movement, so we'll move over to shooting. Okay, so over to shooting. So this unit here with the 52nd is going to shoot across at that unit of the 13th Leger on the right. They can ignore the unit in front because they're not a clear target, because they're obscured there. So they're getting 2 dice, 2 shooting dice, and they're hitting on 4s. That's no hits, that's no good. And we'll move across to the 95th. So again, they're getting 3 shooting dice, and because they're sharpshooter, they're getting to re-roll 1. They are shaken and disordered, so they are getting a -1 penalty to their shooting. So 4s become 5s, and they're going to shoot at that unit that's been got 1 casualty on. So 3 shots hitting on 5s, re-rolling 1. So re-roll one of these. Nope, no hits. So that's nothing else is in range. So that's the end of that shooting phase. So onto hand-to-hand for that combat there. So once again, both sides, the French and the British, get 4 hand-to-hand dice. It was a drawn combat last turn, so there's no advantages to your modifiers. But the French section is shaken, so they're getting a -1 to their hits. So British have got 4 dice hitting on 4s, and the French have got 4 dice hitting on 5s. So we'll do the British first. Once again, not great hand to hand there. It's just one hit for the British, and for the French, the one hit. Now 6s in combat aren't a disorder, unlike in shooting, so it's 1 hit each. So in terms of saves, British need 1 save of 4, which they make, and the French need 1 save of 4, which they also make. So again, is a drawn combat, but as they are still shaken, they will be testing again, so we'll do that now. So again, need to roll hard. A 7 is still fine, so that's the end of that combat, and they're drawn. So we move over to French turn 3. So that is the end of a fantastic movement phase for the French in turn 3. This flanking manoeuvre has really paid off. He managed to get one of the sections here to charge into that section of 52nd Oxfordshires that had moved across to block them, and the other one managed to get round as well and into a shooting position here. But the big move was the Grenadier unit here. The Grenadier section got a whopping 3 moves and are now staring down at the 52nd with the orders there. So that was a great movement for the French. He's moved around here as well just to support his units for the next turn, hopefully. And down here as well, the 2 Voltigeur units tried to get up and attack the section there of 95th, but both failed to get enough distance. But they are obviously in a decent position to shoot, and also they've got some range now on these on the hill as well. So really good movement phase. So let's get over to shooting. So we'll start over here with these Voltigeurs. Now, although they've got some targets on the hill, I think the fact that this unit here is shaken, I've got 2 units here, I've got a good opportunity or a good chance of getting them to test. So we're going to start with the Voltigeurs on the right, and they're going to get their 2 shots into the 95th there, and they're still re-rolling 1 for their sharpshooter. But that's 2 hits, 2 saves of 4 required. No, so that is already 2 over their stamina limit, so they will be testing at the end of this phase. But let's see if they can get some more damage on them. So this unit of Voltigeurs is also going to shoot 2 dice, re-rolling 1. Re-rolling 1. So just another hit. There's some more pain on the 95th, let's see. No, they do save that one. So, but they are going to be testing at the end of the shooting phase. But I'll just go over to the other shooting before I come back to that. So we'll start with the Grenadiers, who have got 2 shots, and they'll be hitting on 4s. No re-rolls. That is cracking. That is 2 hits and a disorder. I'll just cover disorder marker onto these. And 2 saves of 4 required. Note that is 1 casualty on their unit, but crucially they are disordered. That means they can't move next turn, which is what the French wanted. They wanted to halt that movement of those orders. They've still got this unit here to fire as well. Now they are shooting across the hedge, so I am going to give that unit some cover. So although they're getting 2 shots, they're not a clear target, so these are going to be hitting on 5s. That is still a hit, and 1 save of 4 required. No, so that is another casualty, and that unit, that section, is also shaken. So a good bit of shooting there from the French, and we've got this, still got this ongoing hand-to-hand combat to resolve. So I'll go to that next, and also we've got this one here. But before I go on to the hand-to-hand, I forgot we've got this unit here needs to take a break test, morale check for being excess casualties after that shooting round. So I'll do that first before we go to hand-to-hand. So they've got they're 2 over their stamina, so it's 2 dice and it's -2. So that's so they're gone. That's it. The 95th break, that small unit, is gone. So not great for the British, but that's raw, and we'll come over to the hand-to-hand. So after that mini disaster for the British, the 95th unit fleeing the field, will this unit of 52nd Oxfordshires hold on? Let's see. So back to again, we've got 4 dice each for hand-to-hand combat. But because the French are shaken, they're hitting on 5s and the British are hitting on 4s. So we'll do the French first, so 4 dice, hitting on 5s. That is 2 hits. And the British are on 4 dice, hitting on 4s. 2 hits as well, so 2 saves of 4 for the French. Note that is 1 casualty. And 2 saves of 4 for the Brits. 1 casualty as well. So once again, that is a drawn combat. So these go to 2. These go to 1 above their stamina. So it is a drawn combat. And because they're now both shaken, I'll put a shaken marker on there. They're both testing now, so we might as well do that straight away. So the French are getting 2 dice and -1 for being 1 over their stamina level. Let's do that first. So a 5 becomes a 4, so they're broken. They're gone, so they're going to leg it from the battlefield, and we'll see what the Brits do. Again, just 2 dice. A disaster. They've fought themselves into breaking each other. So both of those units are gone off the battlefield. That's it. So we'll move over to the other hand-to-hand combat and see how that goes. So after that particularly brutal round of combat, let's see how these guys get on. So we'll start with the French. So they did charge in, so they're getting 4 dice, but they're hitting on 3s because they get +1 for charging. Just 2 hits, and then the Brits get 4 dice, hitting on 4s. Oh, I missed to put on the trait. Oh dear, nothing. Okay, this could be bad. So that's 2 saves of 4 required. And there's just 1 casualty, so they get 1 casualty there. But they did lose that combat, so they'll be testing, so we'll just do that quickly. But they're fine, so 9 is cool, so they're going to stay in combat, although the French did win that, so a bit of an advantage for next turn. So that is the end of the French turn 3. A really brutal round. We've lost 3 units from the battle now. 2 British units have gone, 1 being the 95th, and a unit from the 13th Leger have gone as well. So there's bodies piling around all around the place now. So let's move over to turn 4 and see how the Brits get on. So that's the end of movement on turn 4 for the British. Obviously they're a little bit hampered because they've got 1 unit there that's disordered with the orders. This unit here is locked in combat with that unit there. So he brought the 95th Rifles, the remaining section, down onto the road just to try and provide a bit of protection here for this unit and get some shots in here. And then this unit from the 52nd made the brave decision to charge into the French Grenadiers, which they successfully did. However, they did take some damage on closing fire, not casualties, but they, as you can see by the marker, they were disordered by that charge. I'm not sure that's going to go. The Grenadiers are good in combat. However, at this stage, it's all about getting those orders back to base and seeing what the French are up to. So let's see how we get on in the shooting phase. So as previously, the 95th get 3 dice in shooting, and they are sharpshooters, so they get to re-roll 1. So let's do that. So 3 dice hitting on 4s, re-rolling 1 of these. So that's 2 6s, which is a disorder. Re-roll this one. 3 6s, a mini Yahtzee. So that's 3 saves of 4 required. Just 1 casualty, but they are disordered, and again that's good news. That means they're not going to be moving in their turn. And that's the end of the shooting, so over to combat. So we'll start with this fight against the Grenadiers. So the British unit charged in, so they're getting 4 hand-to-hand dice. So they get +1 for charging, but they get -1 because of the disorder, so they're going to be 4 dice hitting on 4s. Now the Grenadiers, for a small unit, get 5 hand-to-hand dice. They're also tough fighters, so they're getting to re-roll 1 missed hit as well. So as you can see, the French are going to be tough to crack, but we'll see how we get on. So we'll start with the British, so 4 dice hitting on 4s. Okay, so that's 2 hits. And then 5 dice for the French hitting on 4s. So they get 2 hits, but they get to re-roll 1 for tough fighters. We'll do that, which they make. So that's 3 hits for the French. So 3 saves of 4 for the British. so now that is 2 casualties. Put that there. And just 2 saves for French of 4. Well, interesting, 2 casualties. So that is actually a draw. And they are both shaken as well by that combat. So despite the French being better in combat, it was a draw. So they're both going to be testing. So we'll do that first. We'll do the British first. Just 2 dice. Gone again. Double 1. So they're broken. They didn't like the French Grenadiers very much, but let's see how the Grenadiers get on themselves. They're fine. So unfortunately that British unit also breaks and goes. So we'll move over to the other combat. So for this combat, the French, there's a little marker there to remind me that they won the last combat, so they're getting +1 to their hits, so they're hitting on 3s, and the British are hitting on 4s. So we'll start with, because it's the British turn, we'll start with the British on 4s, 4 dice, hitting on 4s. That's really good, 4 hits, 4 solid hits there. French hitting on 3s, 3 solid hits. So that is 3 saves for the British on 4s. 2 casualties, and French 1 casualty. So how does that play out? So the British lost that round, and the French are okay, they're just on 1 casualty. So the British will be testing because they've got 2 + 1 over, and also they are shaken. So they're going to be testing, so it's 2 dice, -1 for the excess casualty. Oh God, another one gone. So the 4 means they've broken as well. This is a disastrous turn for the British. They really are crumbling against this French onslaught. So that's the end of turn 4 for the British. It's not looking good. They're down to 2 units. Obviously this shaken comes off, this disorder marker comes off now, so that's 1 positive. But they're pretty much surrounded now by French troops. And yeah, not looking good. But let's see how the French get on in their turn 4. Sorry, just a quick addendum. I did miss one of the morale saves for that French unit there. I did roll it and it came out as a 6, so they were fine. So it wouldn't have made a difference to that combat round. So yeah, so we'll move over to French turn 4. So that's the end of movement on turn 4 for the French. So what happened? The 2 sections of voltigeurs tried to charge into that final section of the 95th, but failed to get close enough, albeit they're obviously in good range now to get some fire into them. This section here couldn't move because they were disordered. This section of the 13th Leger charged into the flank of this unit here, who have got the orders, because I have been playing, so although I'm allowing the kind of the 95th and the voltigeurs to be a little bit more in loose formation, I've been working that the bases for here have got the same arcs as if they were in a regiment, so they've actually charged into the flank of that unit there. And there's no closing fire because you can't do closing fire on flanking charges. So there we go. And also this officer rallied off a casualty from the Grenadiers. They were going to charge into that unit of 52nd, but because they were shaken, they couldn't charge. So he's rallied off one of the casualties. So they're ready for next turn. If there is a next turn, we'll see. But we'll move on to shooting. So starting with the voltigeur units there, so the one with the casualty is going to fire first, so it's 2 shots into the 95th. And once again, they've got sharpshooter, so they can re-roll one of these dice. So sitting on 4s. No hits, so 1 re-roll. Nothing, not great. And then the second unit will do the same. That's 1 hit. 2 hits and a disorder. So I'll put that on there. And they've got 2 saves of 4. No, so that is 2 casualties on that 95th, and they are shaken. So the 95th really haven't fared well in this battle, but there you go. So there's no more shooting because everything else is in combat. So we'll come over to this combat and see how we get on. Okay, so as the unit in there charged in, they're getting +1 to their roll. But the bad news for the British unit is they've got a -1 because they're shaken, and also -1 because they've been engaged to their flank. So the French get 4 dice hitting on 3s, and the British get 4 dice hitting on 6. So this is could be interesting. So we'll start with the French. well, that's pathetic. So despite all that charging and good work, they get nothing. So the British may sneak this, we'll see. There's no hits, but that's effectively a drawn combat. However, because the British are shaken, they will be testing. So we'll just do that first now. So 2 dice. These rolls haven't been going well for the British, so we'll see how this one fares. That's fine, so they hold. So that means they're holding for the next turn. So we'll move on to British turn 5. So that was a very quick movement phase for the British because nobody moved. But what did happen was because the 95th are elite 4+, they managed to roll a 4 and remove their disorder. And then that allowed the officers then to rally a casualty off and remove their shaken as well. So although they were shaken and disordered, they are now free to fire with no penalties. But they can't charge or do anything else, so they're just moving on to the shooting phase. So the 95th will be firing at this unit here to see if they can try and at least get them disordered or shaken or something to assist the battle. So they've got 3 dice, and again they're re-rolling 1 for sharpshooter. That is 2 hits and a disorder, and then re-roll this one. Just the 2 hits. So 2 saves of 4 required. So that's another casualty. So they're actually shaken as well. So shaken and disordered, but they're not making any tests at all. So, but not too bad. So we'll move over to this combat and see how we get on. So once again, the British have got 4 dice, but they are still shaken. So that's -1, and they're still engaged their flank. So that's 4 dice hitting on 6s. Wow, that is 2 hits though. Come on, the 52nd. No bias at all. And the French getting 4 hits, 4 attacks on 4s. Just the 1. So 1 save for the British, which they don't make, so that's 1 casualty. And then 2 for the French. No, 2 for the French. So that is a victory for the British. So because they've won, they're still shaken, but it was a 1 combat, so they don't need to test. These are now at 3 casualties, so they're 1 over their stamina limits. So these are shaken, and because they lost a combat, they're testing. So let's do that. So it's 2 dice, -1. So it's a 7. So they're still okay. They're going to hold. It's a 7 is still okay for hand to hand. It's a 6 to withdraw. So yeah. So we'll move over to turn 5 for the French. Okay, so it was another quick movement phase for the French, and it's becoming a real melee now in the middle. So basically this unit of, or this section of voltigeurs managed to charge into the 95th. They took a casualty on closing fire, plus they're disordered, but they're right amongst it now. This unit obviously couldn't then charge in. These are disordered. And then the Grenadiers charged into the front of this brave unit of 52nd. So they've now got multiple combats. So there's no shooting, so we'll head straight over to combat. Right, so this is a little bit complicated because there's quite a lot going on here. So first off, the Grenadiers charged in, so they've got their 5 attacks, and because they've charged in, they're going to be hitting on 3s. This unit here, of the 13th Leger, they're hitting on 4s normally, but they are shaken, so they're going to be hitting on 5s. And then for the British, because they've been attacked to both to the front and the flank, they have to allocate their attacks. So they've got 4 attacks. You have to have at least half your attacks to the front and no more than half to your flank or rear. So what they're going to do, they're going to put 2 attacks against the Grenadiers. And now because they're shaken, that is -1, so they're going to be hitting on 5s. Now, although they won that combat, that was against that unit, so I'm not going to allow any bonuses for that against that attack. So that's 2 attacks hitting on 5s. And then the other 2 attacks are going to be on that unit, and they are shaken, so that becomes 4s become 5s. They're also being attacked to the flank, so it becomes 6s. But because they won that combat, it's back to 5s. So that was a really complicated way of saying 2 attacks to the front, hitting on 5s, 2 attacks to the flank, hitting on 5s. Right, I hope you all got that, and let's crack on. So we'll do the Grenadiers attacks first. So these are 5 attacks, hitting on 3s. Okay, so that's all hits. That is 5 attacks. I'll just make a little, 5 hits. Just make a note of that. Then we'll do the other unit, so hitting on 5s. Just the 1. So that is 6 hits for the French, and then we'll do the 2 attacks on the Grenadiers on 5s. Okay, that's not bad. It's 2 hits on the Grenadiers. Then we'll do 2 hits on the other unit. No, so just 2 on the Grenadiers. So we'll do the saves first. So the British have got to do 6 saves. 6 saves of 4. No, so that is 3 casualties for the British. And the Grenadiers have got to make 2 saves of 4. So that's 1 casualty for the French. Okay, so we'll just allocate that to there because they're going to be shaken now. But basically the French have won that combat. And the British are 3 over their stamina. So they're going to be rolling 2 dice and -3. Let's see how this goes. So that 7 becomes a 4 and they are broken. So they're gone and they've dropped the orders. This is not looking good. But we'll quickly do the attack here as well. So just come back for that. So both units get 4 attacks. So we'll do the French first. This is 4. Again, they charged in, so they're getting +1, but they are disordered, so -1. So that's 4 attacks hitting on 4s. Just the 1 hit. And then the 95th get to strike back. That is 2 hits for the 95th. So the French got 2 saves, which they do make, and the 95th got 1, which they make. So that is a drawn combat. Now, there's no casualties, so they're stuck there. So I think the Grenadiers have now obviously picked up the orders, which have been dropped by that fleeing unit of the 52nd. So we're over to turn 6 for the British, but I'm just going to come back and have a think about whether this is the end of the game. Okay guys, so it's technically turn 6 for the British now. But to be honest with you, I can't see how that lone unit of 95th Rifles that are stuck in combat is going to do anything on this game now. So I'm going to call this a French victory. Now it's a minor victory at the moment because they've got a hold of the orders, but they're still on the table. So to get the major victory, they've got to get off the table over there. Now I've just measured it, it's 34 inches away. So if my maths is correct, that means they're going to need 5 moves in 2 turns, because it was going to turn 7 if you remember. So we'll do it live and we'll just see if they can get those 5 moves off. So again, the commander's here, commander rating of 8. So let's see, they're going to need at least 2 moves on this first roll or they can't do it. So let's see how we get on. So we're needing at least a 6. Okay, well there's 3 moves. So that's 3. They could do it. So they need at least, well they need a 6, a roll of a 6 or less to get these orders off the table. To 7, they didn't do it. So they were just 1 shy of getting off. So that was only 4 moves, which would be 32 inches. So that's a bit brutal, I know. That's a bit harsh on the French, maybe. But I'm sticking to my rules, I've made them, so I will stick to those rules. So it's a minor victory for the French. And I'll just come back and confirm what that means for the campaign. Okay guys, so that's the end of the first game of this campaign. So I thought I'd just quickly go through the campaign tracker that I've set up. By the way, it's very simple. I'm not into making things life too difficult, so pretty straightforward. And then I'll go through how this will be used for the final big battle that I've got planned at the end of the campaign. So on the right hand side is just tracking the victories and losses. So at the moment the French have won the first game with a minor victory, Anglo Allies have lost. And then the left hand side is how these all apply to that final battle. Now firstly, all these are in the Black Powder 2 rulebook. These are all attributes that you can find in that rulebook. On the left hand side are the kind of victory ones, which are kind of positive attributes that you can apply to units. And on the right hand side are kind of negative attributes that you can apply to units. So firstly, I've decided you can't apply these to already elite units. So for example, if you've got Guard, Imperial Guard or the 95th Rifles, these are already elite units, so we can't apply any of these to those. So this is more for your standard line regiments, your artillery units, for your cavalry. And it's very straightforward. So at the moment, for example, the French have got a minor victory. So they'll be able to roll a d6 for that minor victory, and then that would determine an attribute here. So for example, they roll 3. they can then apply the brave attribute to one of their regiments or units in their army for the final battle. If you get a major victory, you can choose, which is obviously an advantage. You can actually choose an attribute. So for example, say I've got my Gordon Highlanders. If I could get a major victory, I could, for example, apply Ferocious Charge to the Highlanders, which would be awesome. For losses, it's similar. So again, you have to apply these. It's roll a d6. So you've got things like Poor Shooters, Unreliable. So these will obviously kind of debuff some units as well. So so that's a bit of flavour to the campaign. And as I say, I'll keep a track of this as we go through, and then these will be applied at the end before the big grand battle at the end. Okay, I hope you enjoyed that, and look forward to seeing you in the next video, and thanks for watching.